This presentation looks at the accuracy of reported inflation rates. The inflation rate is probably the most important economic statistic which is reported regularly and measured regularly. So it's important that it should be accurate. But we're going to look in this little short presentation about factors that may reduce the accuracy of the inflation rate that we are measuring. We're going to use as our example the consumer price index. We know that the inflation rate is actually a percentage change in a particular price index over time. And the most common price index that we use is the consumer price index, which measures the price of goods that consumers or households regularly buy. So let's use that as our example of why inflation rates may be inaccurate. So we know that to measure the inflation rate, we measure the consumer price index at a particular period of time, such as in a year, and we then measure it the following year, and we look at the difference, and the percentage difference is the inflation rate. So in this case, the index was 207, and it rose to 232. So if we measure the percentage change between 207 and 232, this will tell us the rate of inflation between 2006 and 2007. That's the theory, and that's how inflation is calculated. However, what affects the accuracy of this calculated inflation? How do we know that the percentage rate of inflation that we are reporting is the right one? Well, one of the things that could make our inflation figure inaccurate is that over time, the things we buy and how much of our money we spend on consumer goods changes. We say that consumption patterns change. And to reflect these changing patterns of consumption, we need different weights to be used for different goods when we are calculating the weighted average, which is our index. For example, over time, people may spend more money on foreign holidays as their tastes change, and less money on holidays in their own country. So depending on what's happening to the price of foreign holidays and what's happening to the prices of holidays in their own country, there will be an overall change in the inflation rate if people are actually buying more foreign holidays and fewer holidays in their own country. This is an example of a changing consumption pattern, and it will affect the weights that we apply to the price of a domestic holiday compared to the price of a foreign holiday. If the weights don't reflect the consumption patterns, then the inflation rate will be inaccurate. Another thing that makes inflation potentially inaccurate when measured is the fact that new goods are appearing on the market every year, and households may start buying them regularly, whereas before, of course, they didn't exist and so couldn't be bought regularly by households. So what we have to do is we have to change the composition of the basket of goods that we include when we calculate the consumer price index. The composition means what goods are actually included and which goods are left out. So over time, people's spending patterns not only change, but what they spend money on changes. And so we have to change the composition of the goods that we include when we calculate the index of consumer prices. And if we don't change them fast enough, then our inflation rate could be inaccurate. The third thing that could make our reported inflation inaccurate is that sometimes the prices of goods change, but they change in a temporary manner. For example, from time to time, the rate of indirect tax, which is applied to things we purchase, that is a tax like VAT, value-added tax, can either go up or down. So when VAT goes up, goods become more expensive, but VAT may indeed be reduced and goods will become cheaper again. So it's little changes like this that happen. They don't happen very often, but sometimes they are changed, and they do not really reflect a permanent change in the price of goods. So in the year that when VAT goes up, inflation may seem to have gone up. And in a year when VAT is reduced, inflation may not go up so much or even go down, which means that we get a false impression because nothing fundamental is happening to the price of these goods. It's just that the prices are being distorted by temporary changes in things like indirect taxes like VAT. So overall, we have several reasons why inflation figures, as reported and measured by the government, may be inaccurate. And this reflects the spending patterns. This can be because of the changing spending patterns of households, which means that we have to apply different weights when calculating the weighted average. It also means that different households may be using different goods, may be buying different goods over a period of time, and the people who decide which goods to include may be slow to catch up with the different goods which people are buying. And thirdly, it may be because the prices of these goods are changed temporarily, and there is a temporary change in prices, which really does not reflect a permanent change in inflation, but just a temporary one, such as changes in taxes, like VAT, which can be reversed as well. After they've been increased, they can be decreased, etc. So although the inflation rate is a very important figure, and it's measured and reported very often, in fact every month, a new inflation rate is published, there are reasons to believe and to suspect that the inflation rate may be somewhat inaccurate.